It's me. Leave a message at the beep.
Hey, buddy. So, I know I told you I was going to wait to watch Game of Thrones until it caught up, but I saw this great chart the other day that shows that it's just never going to happen. It's, it's this, it's this deal where every time he writes a book, he gets 10%, he gets 90% of the way done. But the problem is he'll never get to 100 because it's always 90% of 90% of 90%. So I binge watched it. Yeah, I've been up for about 9 days straight. And I gotta tell you, I know you don't want spoilers, but I gotta spoil it for you. Everybody dies. And I don't know if you've seen the most recent episode, but it actually ended with literally every character dying. And many of the sets being destroyed, and also the entire planet being scorched, which is, I don't know how they're going to pick up next season, but it seems interesting. Anyway, so I don't remember if I said spoiler alert, but if not, just rewind it. Just go back to the beginning of the message and assume that I said spoiler alert, because, it's Tits McGee, man. It's a great show. Lots of boob, too. Almost as much boob as I like. A little too much incest for my taste. Just me. No judgment. All right, buddy. Call me back. Bye.
Welcome back, my friends. Oh, another week. It has been another week. It is January 25th, the 25th of January. This is a great week. Not because it's historic in any way. I'm sure it is. I haven't checked. That's not why. No, it's great because I've got a lot of really new stuff. Fresh content, up to date. Latest stuff, late breaking stuff. But mostly just stuff that's different from the past. I have very few segments from the recurring segments, though I hope to get back to that as the time is right. Focusing a lot more on quality of, the podcast itself, not worrying so much about the video aspect. I think there's pretty much no video to speak of in this, my Glossy News 4K podcast, news, information, humor, entertainment, and whatever else I come up with. But it sounds good. Oh man, does it sound good. Got a lot to cover this week. So much to cover. With that said, let's get on to our weekly sponsor. You know we've got weekly sponsors. Oh, our sponsors are not just weak, they are weekly. This week's podcast is brought to you in part by Spicy Food. Spicy Food. It what helps clear your sinuses and give you diarrhea at the same time. Spicy Food. You can lose weight through your sinuses, anus, and generally any other way possible. Forget irritable bowel syndrome. With Spicy Food, you can enjoy angry bowel syndrome. And I know they made a joke similar to that on Chelsea lately, but I swear I thought of it first. Not to say that, it's an easy enough joke. All right, that's good enough. Let's just get started. There was a story in the news this week about Amy Schumer stealing jokes, where 3 comedians came forward to say, hey, Amy stole our jokes. And, of course, Reddit's all enraged about it because, stealing jokes is something no comedian ever does. Except it's just what comedians do. On Glossy News, we had Ant, the terrible comedian from Last Comic Standing, steal a joke outright from one of our authors and put it out on Twitter. And when confronted by it, he actually admitted, oh, no, I wasn't stealing the joke. It did come from Glossy News. I was repeating the joke without credit. And the thing is, you can't copyright a joke. You can copyright the exact words in the joke, but if you rephrase it in any way, it's new material. And, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But the outrage about Amy Schumer is ridiculous. All comedians steal jokes. To me, the worst I've ever seen, ever, is Jeff Foxworthy. Now, what he likes to do is he doesn't steal jokes. He uses old jokes. Jokes so old that you can't credit a specific creator. Now, to me, that's lazier than lazy. I do it because I've got a podcast with fewer than 100 listeners. And I really go out of my way to reinvent the jokes. And I admit they're old jokes. I don't pretend they're new jokes. Oh, no. So on Reddit, what I said in response is, everybody steals jokes. Who was it? Lenny Bruce or somebody like that said, I laughed so hard I dropped my pen. I was at a comedy club and I laughed so hard I dropped my pen because he was so famous for stealing jokes. Apparently, Robin Williams was so famous for stealing jokes that one LA comedy club had a red light they would flash to let the onstage talent know Robin Williams is in the house, hold back your best material. Now, I don't know if that's true. Another comedian said that Robin would then subsequently pay you for the joke, but stealing and then paying, I don't know. Robin Williams became very successful. A lot of thief comedians have. Dane Cook was caught using 3 jokes that were very similar to those from Louis C.K. that had been previously recorded. Now, it's possible they came up with the same jokes independently. It's also possible they borrowed. Who cares? Who cares? So to make my point, what I did is I went to Comedy Central's website. I pulled the top 5 comedians on the stand-up comedy page. And it was Natasha Leggero, Hannibal Buress, Jim Gaffigan, Amy Schumer, and gosh, I don't remember the last one. And I Googled their names plus steals jokes. And Hannibal Buress was the only one who had not been accused of stealing jokes. And that's probably because his jokes are terrible. And you'd have to be crazy to steal them. I mean, that's like stealing lawn ornaments out of my yard. You wouldn't do it. It's just not a good plan. So my point is, comedians steal jokes. It's frowned on. Don't make a habit of it. Do it anyway. Reinvent. If you can, come up with your own stuff. If you're a professional comic and your job is to come up with 1 hour of killer material a year, by God, do it. If you're me and your job is to come up with an hour a week, by God, keep cutting them shorter and shorter. And mostly filling the time bitching about other comedians. That's really the plan I'm going with. And I'm pleased with it. It's working out well for me. So yeah, comedians can steal jokes. Comedians do steal jokes. Frowned on, but yeah, it happens. Let it go. Let it go. So when I would take my kids to the pediatrician each year, or, however often it was, there would be a checklist they would hand me. They'd give me a clipboard with a checklist that says, these are age-appropriate things for your kid to be doing if he's 3 to 5 or 2 to 3 or 7 to 10, whatever. Can he name these 4 animals? Can he name them if you point to them? What does he say if this does this? Can he answer the telephone? And I'd stop and I'd say, that's just not an appropriate question anymore. Can my kids answer the phone? Up until very recently, no. Because the phone, what do you mean by the phone? You mean that thing that sits on the table that makes a jingle jangle that you pick up and bark into? We've almost never had one of those. Tina has her phone. I have my phone. Any adult who lives in the house has their own phone. No, the only reason we have a home phone is because it's really cheap now, and because we actually have an answering machine. So if the kids are at home and we're not, we can yell, pick up, it's me. That's how we reach them if they're at home and we're not. Because 2 of them are old enough to be home alone for short periods of time. Can they answer the phone? My kids don't know how to talk on the phone. And I know this because Brendan got a Target card from Grandpa Steve for Christmas and his birthday. 2 separate ones, I'll point out. And that was a whole fun thing, too. He really defied Mom's legacy by being nice to the kids, by being actually generous. So Brendan really wanted to get Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas. What he really wanted was Fallout 4, but he was really upset when he found out they only make that for the X-Bone, and we don't have an X-Bone. So we checked the Target website. They're sold out of everything the week after Christmas. 2 weeks go by, I check. Finally, some stores have it. None of them close by. We had to drive all the way down to Tacoma. But I said, if we're driving if we're spending 45 minutes on the road, you're going to call them first and make sure they have it. So we put the phone on speaker. He calls them. And I say, when they answer, say electronics. And so he does. Electronics. Great. No problem. Gets the electronics department. And while it's transferring, like, when they answer, ask, do you have Fallout 3 in stock? Because, okay. Now, I didn't realize this, but my 13-year-old does not know how to talk on the phone. That's just not a skill he's ever needed to have. So when the guy answers, he talks to him like he's Siri. Electronics, how can I help you? Is Fallout 3 in stock? Excuse me? I'm sorry, excuse me? Is Fallout 3 in stock? Let me go check. Hold music comes on. I'm laughing. I'm like, Jesus, Brendan, he's a real human being. You talk to him like a human being. He's not okay Google. He's not Siri. So the guy comes back. He says, yep, we got one in stock. And I just yell in, great, we'll be there in a half hour. And so it was just bizarre. Do your kids know how to talk on the phone?
My crazy mom. My crazy mom. She's dead. My crazy mom. My crazy mom. She's dead.
My crazy mom. So my mom, in some ways you could look back and say she was careful and conservative and smart with her money and good at prioritizing. Well, maybe not that. I remember when I was a little kid, my parents were recently divorced, so I was, 7-ish. They divorced when I was 6.5-ish. This was a year or two later, so 7, 8 years old. Times were tight, or at least, we were under the impression they were. My mom had taken in boarders in the house to, just cover the bills. And, that's a very conservative thing to do. Now, what we didn't know at the time, what we found out a few years later, is that at the same time, she was aggressively paying down the mortgage, so it was paid off so early, and she never put another mortgage on the house. That's really commendable. That gives you so much safety and security. It's really hard to argue with. And at the same time, she didn't want us to know this. She was also squirreling money away in Canada. And she was doing that so that my dad would not be able to know it existed, and she could always go after him for more child support. She was really crazy about that. But, I think I have a mean streak a mile wide. Hers was transcontinental. It was beyond belief. Now, all that sounds good. Extra money from people renting rooms who were, going into our rooms and stealing our shit, paying down the mortgage, saving money, getting free lunch even though we shouldn't have qualified, going to the food bank even though we didn't need to, leaving the house below 50 degrees in the winter. All that seems like just good financial planning. But I remember something very clearly. I was at the Wigwam with my parents in Linwood. It later turned into something else, and last I saw it was a Detroit Auto Works car dealership before they immediately went broke due to mismanagement because they're terrible people and terrible businessmen. We were in the Wigwam, and we were standing in line, and out of the blue I'm talking to this stranger, which is apparently what 8-year-olds did 30 years ago. And there was a big show on TV at the time called Lottery. And it was about these guys whose job it was to go and track down lottery winners who didn't know they'd won. You know, like that's a real thing. And I turn to this guy and I say, "What would you buy if you won the lottery?" And he said, I never thought about it. I don't know. And then he answers it. I don't remember what his answer was. He says, "What would you buy?" And I said, "You know what I'd buy? I'd buy some new socks." My parents, grabbed me and at that point decided it was not okay to talk to strangers. So they heard, and my mom said, she asked me, we get in the car and she says, "Why would you buy, if you won the lottery, you'd buy socks? Why would you buy socks?" Let's face it, that's a Christmas present we got every year and one we never looked forward to. And I said, "Because I don't own one pair of socks without a hole in at least one sock." Wow. Now, mind you, Mom and Steve were still smoking a pack a day at that point, and I don't know what cigarettes cost back then, but I'm going to guess a day or two's worth of cigarettes would have been enough to buy me some goddamn socks. And it's great to be, financially responsible and all that, but you still have to be a parent. She did the laundry. It's not like she didn't know what was in the laundry. Who finds socks with holes and still pairs them up and puts them back on their kid? I'll tell you who. People who have literally $0. Not people who have secret money in other countries. Not people who are paying down their mortgage at double the speed. My crazy mom. In the mid-90s, I sold broadcast electronics. It was my first real job. It was my first real job, I guess you'd say. It was my first job out of college. It was my first 9-to-5-er. And by that, of course, I mean 7:40 to about 5:30 with like a 40-minute lunch break. My first job that had paid vacation. And to this day, my only job that had paid vacation. My first job with sick time and my only job with sick time. Which is crazy. I've worked more or less nonstop since I was a teenager, since I was like 16. That, that's neither here nor there. No, it was this great job where we sold broadcast electronics, and home theaters were just getting big. People were buying projectors for their home theaters. So forget about the constraints of the time. Back then, a TV, the flat panels didn't even exist until I was there. While I worked there in 96 or 7, the Fujitsu 42-inch flat screen came out, and it retailed for $15,000. And the damn thing weighed a ton, but it was beautiful. And it was so thin, it was like 6 inches thick. Now that's absurd by today's standards. TVs are like 2 inches thick now, or 1, and weigh a fraction as much. But I guess it was 5 inches, because you had a 4-inch behind the bevel, and bevel? What am I talking about? So you could cut out a wall with 2x4 studs and recess it, and it would look like it was flush to the wall. Anyway, it was a big ass flat screen TV, and it was the first one. But the rich people weren't spending $15,000 on those. And by the way, dealer cost was $7,500. So if you got an awesome discount at $12,000, you were still getting ripped off. But they were new and exclusive. But no, you could buy a pretty awesome, bright SVGA projector for $2,500, which I did because I had the money back then. And you could have a home theater that would just crush it. And there was big concern from the movie industry that maybe this is going to be the end of movies. Now, we've seen in the intervening 20 years that movies have not died. But the question always comes up, well, now we've got HD, now we've got 4K. The sound has been perfected for 15 years, and it's always getting cheaper. Are movies going to die? And the answer, to me, is a resounding hell no. Theaters are going to survive. They're going to continue to prosper despite the absurdly high ticket prices. We go to the second-run theater. Just this week, we saw The Martian in 3D for $4 a ticket in Federal Way. It was awesome. Now, I had already seen The Martian online. And let's just say, for argument's sake, that I did so legally. Because, who likes to admit to a crime in a recorded format? But I'd seen it online. And then I'd seen it online again because it was so good. And then I took my family to see it. And seeing it in the theater, especially in 3D, was just plain better. But there's a bunch of reasons theaters are going to survive. The first, the easy one, is 3D at home just isn't catching on. There was a big push, didn't make it. It's a terrible idea. No one wants to sit at home with 3D glasses on. Now, yeah, you can use a 3D TV as a 2D TV, but come on, get real. No, the big reason that movies are going to survive is because the experience is completely different. At home, you have endless distractions. Everyone is on their phone or their tablet, or, halfway through it, you can stop and look down and look up the cast and find out who's in what, and you can pause it to go make snacks. It's not the same. In a theater, you're required to pay attention. And you're allowed to pay attention. It is expected that your phone will be off, that no one will be talking. It is expected that you can't pause it. You have to experience the movie with the timing and cadence that the director intended. And it's just better that way. When I frequently watch movies and TV shows while I'm working. It's always on in the background. And there are movies I've seen 3-4 times that I still haven't, seen. Because I'm constantly pausing them and I miss too much. I tried to watch an interesting thriller, which I'll talk about in a hot stream at some point. And I finally had to just turn it off. I wasn't getting it. The reason they're going to survive is because the money coming in is so fantastic that they can keep making these fantastic works of art, and we'll keep going back to see them because the experience is just plain worth it. Besides, I just can't make the same popcorn at home. I mean, I can. It tastes the exact same. It just doesn't have the same expensiveness about it. I don't know. I just like it. So at the end of December, I saw a job posting here in the city I live in, and it looked great. I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, I fit this description to a T. My resume is absolutely perfect for this. Now, I don't think I'll get the job, but I could certainly apply for it. I mean, it's not exactly congruent with my dreams, but it pays really well. The benefits are excellent, and I qualify. So I applied for the job, sent them a very well-made resume from a template online, got some help from some people online to make it better, and then completed all their forms and sent it in. I met all of the criteria. And then the deadline came and went, and then a week, and then 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks. And at that point, I had, of course, given up hope when I received an email Thank you, but the position has been filled. No telephone interview, no telephone call, no in-person interview. I thought, I get it. I get it. This is probably one of those jobs that never actually existed. I mean, the job itself exists, but the posting didn't. See, I've had those jobs before. A good example is when I worked at Washington Mutual. Before I applied for the job, I went and met with the people. Well, first I met them at a party, my sister's party. Then I met with them in person over lunch. And then I came to their house and had another party. And then we started talking about the possibility of a job. And then they decided, we're going to hire you. Oh, but just so you know, company policy, we have to actually post the job. And we have to interview people for the job. So I said, fine, great. So I didn't submit a resume. I just filled out the application, sent it in. The regional manager, who I'd never met, didn't even, he just glanced at the resume and saw one name on my references, whom he knew personally, called him up and said, who is this guy? And he said, you got to hire him. He's awesome. So I got the job basically by default. I mean, I definitely did my schmoozing and worked at it and was, I guess, qualified. I did well at the job when I got it. I was quite successful. But other people applied. Other people saw that posting and applied. Made sure, spent a half hour filling out the resume. Maybe a dozen of them did it. They customized their resume. They sent it in. And I believe at least 2 or 3 people had to come in and have a sit-down, face-to-face interview for a job that did not exist. Again, the job existed, but the opening did not. And I think, how stressful for those people. You get all dressed up. Maybe you take time off your current job. Maybe you say to your wife today, honey, maybe today's the day. I've got a big interview. I'm going to go in. I'm going to crush it. And they go in and they sit down and they say, why do you want this? Why are you qualified? What are your greatest weak, all this. And they're just, oh man. And then they walk out of there and they're like, God, I crushed that. But it doesn't matter if they crushed it, because the job never existed. The posting, the opening never existed. And I've had a few of those jobs. And I'm confident this was one of those jobs, because it was a assistant to the multimedia and internet marketing director. Assistant. That tells me it's more about relationship than qualification. Now, I'm not saying there isn't someone more qualified than me. I'm sure there is. Maybe they even applied. I'm saying my qualifications were sufficient that I would have ideally at least gotten a phone call. Just a phone call. Maybe a phone interview. A couple of years ago, I applied for a seasonal clerk job and got a call back the next day saying, yeah, we're kind of more interested in you for management. And they brought me in to interview for that instead. I know what's on my resume. I know what's on it. Maybe I should start leaving off the part about being all of SEAL Team 6. Maybe that's dishonest. No, I don't do that. But it was just crazy. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if I have an opinion on this. I've been on both sides of it. I've definitely been on the upside of it. I've presumably been on the downside of it. But man, it was just such a pretty job.
Technology.
So this isn't terribly interesting, but I thought I'd share it anyway. One problem I've had is my coffee pots keep dying. They keep dying. It doesn't matter what I do. I don't treat them badly. We don't have hard water. People say, well, did you leave it on all day? No. The last 2 we've had automatic shutoffs at least. Maybe all of them have, but for as long as I can remember, they've all had automatic shutoffs. And still, every year or two, my damn coffee pot dies. I'm sick of it. Enough so that at Christmas or Thanksgiving, at some holiday, I mentioned it, and my sister was like, yeah, my coffee pot keeps dying too. What do you do? And I said, well, what I've been doing is each time one dies, I buy one that's a bit more expensive. I used to buy $20 coffee pots, then $40, then $60. The damn things still die. And she said, I've done the same thing, except I started at $60 and now I'm closer to $100 and the damn things still die. They die. A year or two is the most you're going to get out of a goddamn coffee pot anymore. And that's ridiculous. So I took matters into my own hands. I'm a fan of the subreddit Buy It for Life. And I believe in buying things once. Even if it costs more, buy something that's good and keep it. So I went on Google and looked for some good coffee pots. I looked everywhere. I found some advice. Oh, just get a French press. That's too much work. No, I like huge cups of coffee and I like them on tap. What I ended up getting was a Curtis coffee maker that came out of a restaurant that had recently gone out of business. Yeah, it's about 2 feet tall. It's stainless steel. It's beautiful. It's a thing of beauty. It's a piece of work. You'd love it. And it consumes about $2.50 a month in electricity. And for that price, I have hot water on tap. I can make a cup of noodle in, the time it takes to fill a cup and stir it. I can make instant oatmeal. The kids can have instant oatmeal. We've got a little basket next to it like you might find in your lunchroom with some cocoa and some cider and some cup of soup and some ramen packets. And, you could also do mashed potatoes in there if you wanted. I think we've done that once just because we could. Throw some flakes in a mug and add your hot water, stir it up, baby, you're in business. It's awesome and I love it. And the best part is, even though there's only like 3 buttons on the whole thing, you can, I went online and grabbed the manual, you can program it. So I'm going to change the heat settings for one, because whoever owned it before had turned the heat down a bit, and it's only at 90%, and I'd like it maybe 95. It's a little cold for my taste. But I'm also going to change the default screen. The company that serviced it, Crystal Springs, had changed it so that it always says Crystal Springs. And I'm going to change it to something. I don't know what. I'd like some suggestions from you guys if you want to leave them in the comments or email me. I'm thinking friggin' coffee or Hell's Yeah coffee. I don't know, but something other than Crystal Springs. That's just got to go. So yeah, that's my plan for coffee, and that's my new plan for kind of everything in the kitchen, is if it dies, I'm buying it from a restaurant supply place, because that stuff is built to last. Yes, it costs 2, 3, 4 times as much, but you'll get a lifetime of joy out of it instead of 6 months. I bought, at one point we had 3 different broken can openers. I said, no. Enough is enough. So we went to the Costco in South Center, which has a restaurant supply section. We bought an industrial can opener. And it's great. It's got this big wide crank on it, so it's actually really easy to use. And you could beat off, well, that's probably not the best way to phrase it. You could subdue an intruder with it. I mean, I guess it depends on what the intruder's into. I'm not gonna poo-poo an intruder, Just a little matter of taste. So yeah, that's my philosophy, man. Buy it once, buy it right. Be done with it.
Hot streams, hot streams for your face. Hot streams for your face.
So I got another hot stream for you. This is kind of a fun one. This is on Netflix right now. It is The Ridiculous Six, starring Adam Sandler. And I know what you're thinking. It's an Adam Sandler movie, and you're right. That does mean automatically it's terrible, and it is. But it's wonderfully terrible. I actually really enjoyed it. It's about this, young man, and I say young because Adam Sandler is not young, but it's about this young man whose father comes back to find him and tells him of money hidden, and then the father's kidnapped and they have to raise $50,000 in the Old West, and he goes off on his adventure to find $50,000 to save his father, and along the way meets 5 other guys, completely random dudes, who were also fathered by his father. And it's a very funny ensemble cast. It's got Taylor Lautner in it, the guy from Twilight, in a role of such comedic genius I would never have guessed he had it in him. It's got Terry Crews, the big muscly guy you've seen in the Old Spice commercials. It's got it's an Adam Sandler movie, so of course Rob Schneider's in it. It's got a bunch of great people, and it's remarkably funny, and it's on Netflix. And if you've paid extra, it's on Netflix in 4K. I haven't paid extra because my connection speed, I just don't think would survive it, and there's just not enough content in 4K. Myself included, I haven't uploaded in 4K in weeks, and no one seemed to notice. So that's my hot stream for this week. Thought I'd make it a quick and dirty one. There you go. Hot stream. All up in your face. So I don't want to say that my Reddit experiment is going well, but my friends, it is going well. It is rumored that I have my first customer. Someone who has a social media presence, but it sucks, and who wants a better social media presence, and I can help. And so that means after only, I guess it's 3 weeks now, I got my first paying gig out of it. And to give you an update on how my Reddit experiment is going, when I hit the 100,000 mark on the 15th, I asked for inclusion in the exclusive Reddit Century Club and have yet to hear back from them. I guess the old school karma whores don't care much for the new karma whores. And that's fine. That's fine. I'll send them another message at 200, which is going to be coming up right quick. Now, it turns out that having 100,000 karma puts me in like the top, I think, 2 or 3% of all Reddit users of all time. And I did that in 15 days. Well, here we are. 22 days have passed, and I'm at 157,000. Which is, just plain silly. I'm now spending 2 or 3 hours a day, 5 days a week on it. And so far the monetary return is not great, but you got to figure the first 2.5 weeks were, background building. And it's just going ridiculous is what it's doing. It's just going ridiculous. Now, I was going to keep my identity secret, and I am. But on Reddit, there's a guy named the Original J-Dog who I had to call in a favor because I've been taking over a bunch of derelict subreddits, specifically adult subreddits with great followings that were banned for spamming. So that's something to be super careful about. And he had to learn my identity in order to help me take over one of the subreddits. Anyway, I'm getting off a bit here. No, the point is the experiment remains on track. I am now averaging just over 7,000 karma a day. And that's ridiculous. I would say in any given 48-hour period, I likely amass more karma than the majority of users on Reddit will in their entire time there. So, and it's fun because every now and then you'll get somebody going, "Oh, this guy, he's just a spammer. He's a link spammer." No? Okay, guys, you got to learn what spam means, what a spammer is. Spam is unsolicited commercial communication via internet. Unsolicited, you're there for the content. I get no direct gain from, 99.9% of what I do, or let's just say 100% in case Reddit is listening. I provide links, and they go, "Well, this is just a repost." Guys, everything is a repost. Unless I own the picture, it's a repost. And if I own the picture, then it actually is spam. You can't have it both ways. And what you don't realize, in the types of subreddits on which I am active, which are, well, we'll get into that later. In the types of subreddits in which I'm active, there are only about 6 or 7 of us who provide something like 70-80% of the content. If people like me quit, you'd notice. The content would suck. New people would have to step up to take our place. They're not exactly jumping out of the woodwork to do that. And they don't know what they're doing. So yeah, oh, this is a repost. It's a repost. Well, you know, if it's got 400 or 800 or 1,300 upvotes, and that's net upvotes, not just upvotes in general, but above the 0 mark, 1,300 more upvotes than downvotes, it's clearly new to a lot of people, or at least something they want to see again. And posting something in one subreddit that's never been there, where, you know, it's, oh, well, that was, I saw this in such and such. Great. Maybe it was there, but it's never been here. And very good likelihood it's a different crowd. Even stronger likelihood that the majority of people were offline last time it was posted. And pardon me, but I know how to get more points from your post than you do. I know where it really needs to go. And that's why I have my first customer. So that's my Reddit update. I know probably nobody cares, but I'm going to keep it coming because this is getting exciting. It's just like I hoped. It's every boy's dream. Uh-oh, guys. Uh-oh. You know what that sound means? It means it's over. It's done. You got to get back to finding other stuff to entertain yourself. This podcast has reached its conclusion. But don't give up yet. There's a closing thought, and the closing thought this week is a doozy. So, thank you for enjoying the January 25th, 2016 podcast. Yes, I said the year right, though I'm still writing 82 on my checks. Sure, I was only, 8 at the time, but I still was writing checks. It's a busy life. You try being middle class. Exactly, that's what I thought. Segment bumpers and backing music by Greg the Hero. Good work, Greg. You do good stuff. And by the way, Greg is not his name. It's his stage name. It's his stage name, and to my knowledge, he's not even a stripper. Additional background music by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Check him out, or don't. Whatever. He does good work too. Be sure to check back next Sunday or Monday as the podcast makes its way out into, I guess, the eternity of the internet. Until it's all shut down in cyber warfare. Damn you, ISIS! Why won't Donald Trump build a wall to shut down our internet? Don't worry, he's formulating a plan. Follow me on social media and all that good stuff. You can find links to Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, all that by going to glossynews.com/podcast. You can even find links to where the Glossy News articles which support these go, but really, you can find the info on iTunes or YouTube, or wherever it is you got this, unless this was emailed to you, in which case, I don't even know where we are right now. Closing thought, and I swear I will close with this thought. Biggest movie of all time, Avatar. It's not even close. $2.7 billion at the box office. It was a mammoth, a monster. And why? I don't know, because it was pretty. It wasn't a good story. It wasn't even memorable. Here, let's do a quick quiz. Name 2 characters from Avatar. Can you name the planet they were on? Name 1 quote. What's one great quote from Avatar? There is a sequel to Avatar planned. Its release date has been pushed back. And it may be because they've realized that Avatar itself is completely forgettable. I mean, I remember it being blue and beautiful, visually stunning, but I'm not sure a sequel would have the same effect because, well, it's not new anymore. I know it was about mining a tree, but the story was really thin. The characters were really two-dimensional, or one-dimensional in the case of that guy who was just a vertical line. I might be thinking of something else. Avatar. It was a great movie. I saw it twice in theaters. Once in 2D, once in 3D, and this is when I very first got my new eyeballs. Back when I got LASIK, back when I could actually see for a living. The first time I saw it, I had to use eye drops about 8 times throughout the showing because my surgery was so fresh. It was beautiful. I loved it. But I can't tell you a whole hell of a lot about the movie. Goes to tell you something about, the sparkly pretty packaging over what's actually in the gift. Alrighty, guys. One more week done. Yeah. All right. Well, I will talk to you next week.